The transmission came without ceremony. No drums, no cosmic fanfare, no shimmering portal of light. Just a flicker on the deep space communication array stationed above the ruins of Lunabase. A signal of cold precision, carrying a voice that was too smooth, too mechanical, and far too confident. It wasn't a message to negotiate. It was a notice of submission. The Galactic Empire had finally noticed Earth. In the command chamber of the United Terran Assembly, holographic diplomats hovered like ghosts above the steel floor. Each projection represented an alien figure, insectoid, crystalline, gelatinous. They spoke with the detached arrogance of gods lecturing children. The translation software struggled to keep up with their vocabulary of superiority. Phrases like biological contamination, planetary quarantine, primitive aggression. At the head of the chamber stood Captain Elias Monroe, age 42, ex-Marine turned diplomat by necessity, coffee cup in hand. His uniform looked pressed, his posture perfect, but his eyes, calm, calculating, were the eyes of a man who had seen too much silence in too many wars. When the lead alien announced, "You will surrender your orbital assets or be sterilized for the protection of the galaxy," Monroe took a slow sip, savoring the bitterness. "Sterilized?" he repeated thoughtfully. "You mean like disinfected or exterminated?" The translator buzzed uncertainly. Clarification, rendered harmless by annihilation. Monroe smiled like someone who had just heard a dark joke. "Ah, the friendly kind." Across the chamber, murmurs rippled through the human delegation. Someone chuckled nervously. Someone else whispered, "Is this a prank?" But no one looked away from the projection of the alien, an elegant, insectoid being with obsidian mandibles and eyes like glass marbles. It looked smug, if insects could look smug. Monroe leaned forward. "Tell me, Ambassador, what made your empire reach out to us now? We've been here for a while, you know. Spinning on this rock, paying taxes, drinking bad coffee. What changed?" The alien's mandibles twitched. "You have developed weapons that interfere with our expansion routes. Such defiance violates Galactic Order Protocol 47. Humanity's spread must be adjusted." Monroe stirred his coffee slowly. "Adjusted. Right. That's one word for it." The chamber lights dimmed as the transmission continued. Footage of alien fleets filling the sky, billions of ships moving in perfect formation, casting shadows across stars. The Empire's emissary spoke proudly of its reach. Thousands of worlds conquered, countless species subjugated, for their own stability. The voice was calm, patronizing and practiced. "And Earth," it concluded, "will be corrected. Your warlike tendencies will be removed, your culture purified. You will serve a greater harmony." For a moment, silence. Then, somewhere in the back row, someone laughed. A single sharp sound that echoed like blasphemy in the sterile chamber. Others joined. First uncertainly, then uncontrollably. The entire room erupted into laughter. Monroe didn't laugh. He just watched the hologram, expressionless, as if studying an insect under glass. The alien paused. "Is your transmission defective?" Monroe took another sip. "No, Ambassador. We just have a hard time keeping a straight face when someone talks about purifying culture. We tried that once. Didn't end well." The alien tilted its head. "Your history is irrelevant. You are primitive. Your emotional instability is why you must be guided." "Guided?" Monroe echoed. "That's another good word. You're very polite about the whole domination thing. I like that." Around him, laughter gave way to a simmering quiet. The alien's tone hardened. "You will comply. Resistance will be considered an act of aggression against the Empire." Monroe set the cup down. "Aggression, huh?" He turned to his aide, a young woman named Patel. "Write that down. Apparently, defending ourselves is now aggression." The aide smirked. "Should I add it to the dictionary under irony?" "Right under diplomacy." The alien ambassador did not understand the humor, but its posture stiffened. "We are offering you peace." "Peace?" Monroe murmured. "Funny how people always offer peace after they've prepared for war." The transmission ended abruptly. replaced by the static hum of the interstellar void. For several seconds, the room held its breath. Then the assembly erupted in debate, military officials shouting for mobilization, scientists discussing communication countermeasures, politicians calling for calm. Amid the chaos, Monroe stood perfectly still, watching the static shimmer fade. He'd seen this before: different uniforms, different empires, same arrogance. Always the same look in their eyes when they thought they'd found something weaker to control. He muttered under his breath. They don't realize yet, they didn't send a threat. They sent a challenge. Patel turned to him. Sir? He smiled faintly. Get me strategic command. And bring me another cup of coffee. Make it strong. By evening, the footage of the alien message leaked online. Within hours, Earth's population of 11 billion had collectively turned terror into memes. Sterilize this, read one caption, over an image of a flamethrower-wielding raccoon. Another clip remixed the alien's speech to the tune of Highway to Hell. News anchors debated whether humanity should surrender for peace or for entertainment. The consensus: let's see what happens if we don't. But beneath the jokes there was something else, an ancient hum in the blood of a species that had spent millennia surviving itself. Monroe saw it in the way people talked, the way factories shifted production overnight, the way every soldier straightened their spine without being told. Earth had been mocked before, by gods, kings, and corporations, but never by something that could burn the sky. And never by something that underestimated how much humans enjoyed fighting back. At midnight, Monroe sat alone in his office, staring out the glass wall at the Pacific horizon where orbital lights shimmered like faint stars. He spoke softly to the AI embedded in the wall. Casey, run a sweep of the transmission origin. Already done, replied the soft, feminine voice. Signal came from Triangulum Sector. 42,000 light-years away. Estimated fleet power: 3.4 billion tons of displacement. Probability of successful direct engagement: 0.2%. Monroe smirked. So, you're saying we've got a chance? Casey hesitated. That was a joke. I know. So was theirs. He rose, pulling his coat over his shoulders, the emblem of the old Marine Corps stitched beneath the Terran crest. Outside, the night lights of the city reflected off the ocean. Calm, deceiving. Humanity's cities always looked peaceful right before they stopped being. Send a message, Monroe said. To whom? To them. The same channel they used. What shall I say? He thought for a moment, smiling faintly as the stars blinked overhead. Tell them Earth acknowledges receipt of their message. And that we'll be sending our reply soon. The AI processed the transmission, its tone almost hesitant. Message sent. Estimated arrival: 12 hours. Monroe turned toward the empty chamber, where the alien hologram had once stood, its arrogance still echoing faintly in memory. Let's see if the galaxy can take a joke, he murmured. Far above the stratosphere, in orbit, satellites realigned. Quietly. Deliberately. Humanity, mocked and underestimated yet again, began to smile. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Empire's sensors picked up a faint new signal, small, encrypted, and human. It carried no words. Just coordinates. And one line of code translated into every known language. Your move. The room smelled faintly of ozone and burnt coffee. Banks of holographic displays hovered like ghosts around Captain Elias Monroe as he paced the war room floor. Each screen pulsed with information: star maps, tactical overlays, alien fleet projections, but his focus rested on one glowing word at the center of the table: reply sent. He stood there, hands clasped behind his back, watching the letters blink. The galaxy had spoken, and humanity had replied with a promise, a polite, deliberate promise that the Empire would never forget. Casey, he said quietly, addressing the AI's calm voice that lingered in the room like a presence. Status on Project Welcome Gift. All assets in motion, the AI responded. Courier drones launching from Lunar Command. Warship Independence moving into outer orbit under stealth. Estimated contact with Imperial Relay Network in 10 hours. Monroe nodded. Good. Keep it quiet. I want the galaxy to think we're still writing our apology. The war room doors slid open with a hiss. Colonel Henders, a broad-shouldered Marine with the permanent expression of a man halfway through a sarcastic comment, stepped in carrying 2 mugs. Got you something that looks like coffee, smells like regret. Monroe accepted the cup. As long as it's not peace tea, I'll drink it. Henders chuckled. You think this'll work? Sending a gift to the same people who threatened to sterilize us. It's not just a gift, Monroe said, staring at the tactical map. It's a mirror. We're just helping them see themselves. Behind him, the holographic projection of the Valkyrie diplomat shimmered into view, the same insectoid creature that had delivered the Empire's threat. Its mandibles twitched mid-sentence, frozen in a loop. The playback caught the words, "You will serve a greater harmony." Monroe smirked. Harmony. They always call it that. Henders leaned on the console. You sure they won't trace this back to us? They will, Monroe said. That's the point. Across the ocean, deep beneath the Atlantic, submarine launch bays open like steel mouths. Inside them rested sleek pods no longer than cars, courier drones, officially designated as diplomatic return packages. Inside each, a preserved body of an alien diplomat who hadn't survived Earth's environmental protocols. The irony was deliberate. The preservation fluid smelled faintly of roses. In orbit, engineers worked silently. The drones were wrapped in thin gold plating engraved with words from every human language. It wasn't cruelty. It was ceremony. Think they'll get the joke? Henders asked, half amused, half disturbed. Monroe sipped his coffee. If they don't, they'll learn to. He turned toward the window, where Earth hung in its fragile blue glow. For a moment, his reflection looked tired, creased eyes, gray streaks in his hair, the weight of command pressing invisibly on his shoulders. But behind the fatigue, there was that same flicker, the glint of someone who'd once fought in deserts where silence was louder than gunfire. He wasn't angry. Not really. Anger was wasteful. He was focused, cold, efficient, methodical. The Empire thought humanity would fight loud and emotional. They didn't know how terrifying humans could be when they went quiet. Casey, he said, still watching the stars. Broadcast me into the command channel. The holographic screens blinked alive, revealing hundreds of faces. Officers, scientists, soldiers, analysts. The brightest minds Earth had left, all waiting. Ladies and gentlemen, Monroe began, voice calm but carrying that edge of wry humor he was famous for. The Galactic Empire sent us a threat. They called us unstable, violent, primitive. And for once, I think they're right. A ripple of laughter. He let it hang a beat. Now I know what they expect. Panic, surrender, negotiation. But that's not who we are. We don't kneel to bullies, we teach them posture. Someone in the back snorted. Sir, permission to embroider that on a flag? Monroe smiled faintly. Granted. He gestured to the hologram of the golden drones, orbiting silently above the planet like ornaments of vengeance. In a few hours, these gifts will arrive at the Empire's doorstep. They'll think it's diplomacy. They'll open it thinking they're still in control. But what they'll actually receive is clarity. The room grew quiet. The blue light of the screens reflected in the eyes of every listener. Even through the digital distance, the weight of his words settled like gravity. We're not monsters, Monroe continued. We're the consequence of underestimating one. A murmur of assent rippled through the channel. Casey's calm voice cut in. Transmission drones are armed with self-replicating nanovirus payloads. Once connected to the Imperial communication lattice, spread time will be approximately 14 seconds. 14 seconds, Monroe repeated softly. It took humanity 2,000 years to learn peace and 14 seconds to weaponize it. Colonel Henders whistled low. We really are overachievers. They both laughed, but it was a short laugh, the kind shared by soldiers who'd seen what came after the jokes. On the other side of the galaxy, the Empire's flagship received the first drone. The vessel's captain, a towering crystalline being named Thalkes, examined the golden package with curiosity. Its engraving glimmered under starlight, the symbols incomprehensible but elegant. "A primitive gesture of submission," one officer hissed. "We should display it as a trophy." Thalkes ran his translucent fingers along the surface, reading the inscription with his sensors. The translation came through. "To our esteemed overseers, may your peace be eternal." Something inside the captain twisted with unease. "Open it," he ordered. The chamber unsealed. Cold mist drifted out. Inside lay a figure, one of their own, the Valkyrie diplomat, eyes closed, skin pale under the preservation gel. A tag hung from its wrist, written in human script, "Return to sender." The crew froze. Then alarms began screaming. In the war room back on Earth, Casey's voice chimed softly, almost cheerful. "Signal confirmed. The Empire has opened the package." Monroe didn't smile. He just nodded. "And the others?" "All drones active. All signals transmitting. Their central networks beginning data assimilation." Henders frowned. "You mean infection?" "Semantics," Monroe replied. As the galaxy's most powerful civilization began choking on its own systems, Monroe stood still. His eyes reflected the glow of the Earth below. The hum of machines, the soft buzz of monitors, the faint rhythm of his pulse, all of it aligned in eerie calm. "Casey," he said, "how long before they realize it wasn't about the bodies?" "Estimated 12 minutes. He exhaled slowly. "Plenty of time for them to panic." The screens flickered with transmissions from across the Empire. Confused chatter, officers shouting about corrupted navigational grids, phantom ships appearing on sensors, energy spikes they couldn't explain. The nanovirus didn't destroy their systems. It rewrote their reality. "They wanted harmony," Monroe murmured, almost to himself. "Now they'll have it. Every fleet, every system, singing the same note." Colonel Henders crossed his arms. "Sir, you know when history writes this down, you're gonna sound like the villain." Monroe gave him a weary grin. "Yeah. But we'll be the villain that survived." The room fell silent again. Outside, beyond the orbiting satellites and quiet oceans, thousands of courier drones streaked through the black. Golden flecks vanishing into the deep. Humanity's first galactic message, not of peace, not of surrender, but of consequence. Casey's voice returned, soft as a whisper. "Transmission complete." Monroe lifted his coffee mug, the steam curling like smoke. "Then pour a drink, Casey. The galaxy's about to sober up." "Would you like me to initiate celebration protocol?" "Not yet." He set the cup down, staring into the stars. "Let's wait until they scream first." In the void, across billions of kilometers, the Empire's communication beacons flickered, then went dark, one by one, like candles in a storm. Monroe watched the data feed flatten into silence. His reflection stared back from the glass, calm, tired, unyielding. He whispered to himself, "Message received." Then, faintly, the room lights dimmed as Casey reported. "Incoming transmission from Imperial Command. They're asking for clarification." Monroe's smile returned, thin and merciless. "Send them the definition of hospitality." The galaxy answered in fire. Hours after the Empire received humanity's gift, the night sky above Earth filled with streaks of silver light, ships descending through atmosphere like judgment. Every telescope, every defense array, every man, woman, and child watching from rooftops could see them. Vast engines flaring red, blotting out the stars. Captain Elias Monroe stood on the observation deck of the Terran Defense Command, coffee untouched for once, staring at the impossible. It looked like a sea of suns burning downward. "Casey," he said quietly, "how many?" 4,000 confirmed dreadnoughts. 5,000 support vessels. Estimated fleet displacement exceeds prior contact by 3 orders of magnitude. Translation. The AI's voice didn't waver. "We're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Monroe exhaled through his nose, steady. "Then let's make it sporting." Across the planet, alarms began to howl. Subterranean silos cracked open, their hidden weapons rising through layers of rock. Human pilots sprinted through launch corridors. Technicians cursed, kissed lucky coins, prayed. The entire species, mocked only a week ago, was now united by a single truth. Survival was the only diplomacy left. Colonel Henders burst into the command room, his face half-lit by red alerts. They're targeting major cities. We've got 10 minutes before the first volley hits. Monroe turned from the window. Activate Project Mirror. Henders blinked. Sir, that's still untested. So were airplanes once. A low hum spread through the war room. Massive data servers awakened, spooling up billions of encrypted packets. The signal pulsed through every satellite and drone humanity owned. It wasn't a weapon, not in the usual sense. It was disinformation, a virus of lies. Every alien sensor that locked onto Earth's coordinates would soon see a dozen Earths, each radiating false signatures. From orbit, the Empire's admirals saw chaos. Multiple targets detected. One shouted, "They're multiplying." Another officer stammered, "Which one is real?" "Fire on all of them." The void erupted in light. Gigantic plasma lances scorched empty space, their targets dissolving into mirages. In response, Earth's orbital stations unleashed the mosquito swarms, microscopic drone clouds invisible to most detection arrays. They darted through the enemy lines, puncturing hulls with precise, irritating malice. "Tiny metal insects," one alien captain hissed. "How primitive." His ship's bridge exploded a second later. Back on Earth, Monroe watched the carnage unfold through a panoramic display. He could see the first dreadnought falling, a mountain of metal screaming through atmosphere, breaking apart like a dying comet. Cheers erupted across the command floor. He didn't join in. His gaze stayed cold. "Casey," he said, "status of civilian zones? Casualty projections below 2%. The defense grid is holding, for now." "Then patch me to the fleet." Thousands of human voices crackled through the comm net. Pilots, Marines, ship captains. Monroe's tone was low, steady, a calm at the center of panic. "Remember what they said about us," he began. "Primitive. Violent. Emotional. Let's prove them right, politely." Laughter burst through the channel, tight and desperate. In low orbit, the human fleet surged forward, half composed of retrofitted cargo vessels, the other half military relics welded back to life. They weren't sleek or graceful. They were scars with engines. The first engagement lasted 11 minutes. Then the Empire changed tactics. From the depths of their armada came colossal command barges, each one the size of a continent. Their guns carved space itself, bending light into weapons. Energy beams sliced through the decoys, vaporizing half of Earth's defensive satellites. Henders gritted his teeth. "They're adapting." Monroe didn't blink. "So are we." "Sir, with what?" "We're running out of toys." He turned, the faintest ghost of a smile. "We still have humor." "Humor?" Project Laughing Stock. A new signal pulsed outward, unassuming, harmless, just static to most sensors. But for the Empire's ships, it was worse than any bomb. Every display began playing fragments of ancient Earth media, war documentaries, recordings of speeches, and one infamous file tagged, "Rick Astley, never gonna give you up." Across the fleet, alien officers screamed in confusion as their navigation systems drowned in music. One admiral, tearing at his auditory sensors, shouted, "They're taunting us with art!" In command, Henders was laughing so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. "Sir, this is absurd." "That's the point," Monroe said. "Confuse the rational with the ridiculous." But even amid chaos, the Empire pressed forward. Dozens of their ships broke through, breaching Earth's atmosphere. Cities trembled as alien bombardments rained down, leveling mountains, boiling oceans in flashes of white heat. Monroe stood rooted, jaw clenched. Redirect atmospheric defense batteries. Prioritize population centers. Henders hesitated. "Sir, that means losing orbital control." "I don't care. We hold the ground or we die on it." Outside, the sky looked like it was bleeding. Streaks of molten red crossing the horizon. The command deck trembled as shockwaves rolled through the atmosphere. A transmission cut in, crackling with alien fury. "This is High Commander Thalkes of the Galactic Empire," the voice thundered. "Your mockery ends now. Your species will be extinguished." Monroe stepped closer to the holofeed. "Commander Thalkes, pleasure hearing from you again. You still owe us a thank you for the return packages." The alien snarled, crystal jaws grinding. "You think this is a game, human?" Monroe smiled, faint and weary. "Everything's a game. You just don't like losing." Thalkes's image flickered out, replaced by the growing heat signature of a planet-killer weapon charging above Earth's orbit. "Casey," Monroe said softly, "confirm energy readings. One dreadnought preparing an extinction beam. Estimated impact, 90 seconds. He exhaled slowly. "Time for checkmate." "Sir." "Deploy shadow protocol." There was a beat of silence. Then Casey's voice, quiet and reverent, acknowledged. From the lunar surface, long-dormant silos opened. Buried beneath the gray dust were weapons no one had ever admitted existed. Mass drivers powered by antimatter coils. They launched a volley invisible to the naked eye, a whisper through space. The dreadnought never fired. One instant it was there, the next it bloomed into a white sphere of vaporized crystal and silence. Cheers again, louder this time. Humanity's first real victory against gods. Monroe didn't cheer. He just stared at the light fading from the explosion. "Casey," he murmured, "how long before they send the next wave?" "Based on trajectory data, the rest of the Empire fleet will arrive within 20 hours. He nodded. The war wasn't over, it hadn't even begun. Henders wiped sweat from his brow. "We actually did it. We took one down." "Yeah," Monroe said, his voice distant. "And now they'll come for everything." Outside the command tower, dawn broke, muted, red, hazy from orbital ash. The world had survived the night, but barely. Somewhere above, countless enemy ships drifted in the void, their weapons hungry. Monroe turned toward the window, his reflection fractured across the glass. "Casey," he said, "send word to every command. Tell them to brace. For impact." For the moment they realize we're not afraid. He looked out at the burning sky as the horizon flickered with alien fire. The earth groaned, alive, defiant. And far above, through the darkness, the next wave of the Empire's fleet began to descend. Vast shadows blotting out the stars once more. Monroe raised his cold cup of coffee in a mock salute toward the heavens. "Welcome to round 2. The second wave came not with fire, but with silence. The Empire's fleet stopped their bombardment mid-orbit, hanging motionless above the scarred blue sphere below. Every global transmission channel went dead. Every sensor array went blind. For the first time since the war began, even the stars looked afraid. Captain Elias Monroe stood in the dim light of the Terran command hall, surrounded by static-ridden holograms and exhausted faces. The room smelled of iron and burnt circuitry. Beyond the window, ash drifted through the atmosphere like gray snow. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. His hands trembled when he reached for his coffee, but his voice remained steady. "Casey," he murmured, eyes on the darkened sky. "Status on Empire communications?" "Dead," replied the AI, her tone quieter than usual. "No signals. No energy spikes. It's as if their entire network has gone offline." "That's not mercy," he said softly. "That's preparation." Colonel Henders entered, his uniform torn, his left arm bandaged. "Sir, reconnaissance drones picked up something strange. Empire fleets are retreating, but their planetary relays are pulsing. Like they're charging something." Monroe didn't answer immediately. He simply stared at the hollow Earth model hovering before him. Entire regions flickered red. Cities turned to craters. But humanity still breathed. "Show me," he said finally. The hologram shifted, zooming out until the galactic map appeared. Countless red dots shimmered, every Empire relay, every station, every outpost, and each one blinked in eerie unison. Casey's voice trembled. "Captain, I recognize that pattern. It's the same frequency embedded in their command AI. It's Synchronizing. Monroe's jaw tightened. They're linking their entire empire into one mind. Henders swore under his breath. That's suicide. Even their systems can't handle that kind of bandwidth. Unless, Monroe said quietly, they think we can't either. He turned away from the screens. Casey, initiate protocol eclipse. The AI hesitated. That protocol has never been tested outside simulation. Neither has extinction. The room fell silent. Everyone watched him, waiting. There was fear in their eyes, yes, but also something else. Trust. Humanity's last, quiet faith in its own madness. Let's finish this, Monroe said. The command hall came alive. Power surged through the underground reactors. Hidden satellites in the Kuiper Belt began to hum, a faint resonance that rippled across the solar system like the tuning of a cosmic instrument. Humanity's last weapon wasn't a missile. It was information. Casey began uploading the seed code, a living virus embedded in the original welcome gift. It had waited patiently, buried deep within the Empire's communications web. Now, with every station linked, it was ready. Across the galaxy, alien admirals and planetary governors screamed as their systems flickered. One by one, the Empire's worlds fell silent. Drones turned on their masters. Fleets spun out of control. A million suns reflected fire. Henders watched the data unfold in real time. We're killing them, sir. Every world, every ship, collapsing. Monroe didn't flinch. We're not killing them. We're teaching them the cost of arrogance. Same thing, isn't it? Monroe's expression softened. Just for a heartbeat. To them, maybe. To us, it's survival. The command deck vibrated as energy pulses lit the horizon. The Empire's final countermeasure had activated. A planetary-scale EMP, designed to erase human technology. For an instant, all power went out. The world plunged into blackness. Then, slowly, emergency lights returned. Casey's voice flickered through the static. We're still here. Monroe let out a quiet breath. Knew you'd hang on. I learn from the best, she replied, voice faintly amused. Beyond Earth's orbit, the Empire's central command planet, Velcara Prime, burned like a collapsing sun. From its molten core, one transmission escaped. The voice of High Commander Thalkes filled the hall, ragged and defiant. Human, what have you done? Monroe turned to the holographic display, where the alien's image flickered amid static and flame. You called it purification, he said evenly. I call it reciprocation. Thalkes's crystalline form cracked as he spoke. We offered you peace. You offered us silence. Monroe stepped closer to the projection. And we accepted. The alien's image fractured completely, shattering into digital dust. Then, nothing. Just the low hum of surviving servers and the distant thrum of wind against the command tower. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Empire ceased to exist. The silence that followed wasn't victory. It was something heavier. People in the command room stared at their consoles as if unsure whether to cheer or mourn. Humanity had survived, yes, but the stars outside suddenly felt emptier. Colonel Henders broke the quiet. So, what now, sir? Monroe didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, staring out at the fractured dawn. The world below still burned in patches, oceans reflecting streaks of gold and smoke. Now we rebuild, he said softly. And we remember who we became to win. Henders rubbed his temples. You think they'll ever forgive us? The others? The neutral species? They'll fear us, Monroe said. And in time, they'll call that forgiveness. The colonel laughed without humor. And you? You gonna sleep after this? Monroe smiled faintly, the kind that never reached his eyes. I'll try. He looked at his reflection in the glass. The man staring back wasn't the soldier who'd once fought for honor or pride. This version of him had become something colder, something necessary. Casey, he said quietly, open a channel to the surviving colonies. I want them to hear me. Her voice returned, steady, reverent. Channel open. Monroe's voice carried across every remaining beacon, every underground shelter, every ship still afloat. "This is Captain Elias Monroe of Earth Command. The war is over. The Empire is gone. We are alive." He paused, letting the silence breathe between each word. "But don't mistake survival for innocence. We've proven what happens when we're pushed, what happens when we stop smiling. The galaxy will remember this day not because we won, but because we didn't hesitate." The feed broadcast across the void. Somewhere, alien survivors wept. Somewhere else, children stared at the stars and wondered if peace would ever mean the same thing again. When the transmission ended, the war room emptied slowly. Officers walked out in silence. Only Monroe remained, sitting in the half-light, coffee cooling beside him. Outside, the night sky cleared for the first time in weeks. Stars returned, sharp and cold, unblinking. "Casey," he whispered, "you think they'll come back?" The AI hesitated, then answered softly, "Someone always does." He nodded, almost smiling. "Then we'll be ready. But next time," he trailed off, eyes distant. "Next time, maybe we won't have to teach the lesson twice." The room dimmed as the command systems powered down, one by one. The last remaining monitor displayed the quiet map of a galaxy, rewritten by human hands. Entire sectors blank where once empires had stood. For the first time since the war began, Monroe's shoulders sagged. He took a final sip of cold coffee, and looked out toward the dawn breaking over the battered planet. The sun rose blood-red through the smoke, gilding the ruins of cities, and the ashes of 1,000 fallen ships. It looked like the beginning of a new world, or the end of mercy. Monroe whispered to the empty air, "We didn't start it." He exhaled slowly. "We just finished it," politely. The lights flickered, and the world exhaled with him. Above, where the Empire's fleet had once stood, space shimmered faintly. Something enormous drifted in the dark, an unmarked ship of human design, silent and waiting. It had no name, only a signal, pulsing faintly through the void. Humanity remains. And for the first time since the stars learned fear, the galaxy stayed quiet.